Lastly, I'd just like for everyone from every tribal nation who's in attendance today to either stand or raise your hand so we can acknowledge your presence here on this special day. Please, Mohegan, Eastern Pequot, Narragansett. So as Allison said, we stood here, it was about 15 months ago on a too hot August day, right over there, where there's now a beautiful cantilever out over there. And we broke ground on this amazing project. And here we are, 15 months later. It's a minor miracle that Mel Weiss and his construction team were able to, in that very short time, create this amazing space. So I would like just to lead off with a thanks to Mel and his team for the work that they did. Thank you, Mel. But in that theme of creation, he created this space for us. He's the first to tell you, he already told me himself this morning, I just had to put it together. Somebody had to want this, somebody had to envision this, somebody had to plan this, somebody had to prepare this. And that's not 15 months worth of work. That's hundreds of years of our history, dozens of years of tribal history trying to ensure that we didn't forget that this is Mohegan land, and about 14 years of planning and preparation for that execution. It's a heritage that's good and bad. Centuries ago, when this land was deeded, the 9-mile square was deeded that became Norwich, there was a promise made that the 16 acres, part of which we're standing on right now, would be preserved forever for the Mohegan tribe. That promise was continually broken over the next 300 plus years. This park will ensure that that history is at least remembered. History can be good, history can be bad, but history has to be remembered. The arrival of English settlers on this land created an intertribal friction as each tribe tried to play for the favor of the settlers and the governments that they were establishing. The Mohegans and Narragansetts jockeyed for position, and that led to battle right here on this land. We all know the center story of where I'm at, the reason that this is called Uncas Leap Heritage Park. The story is told of Uncas's leap across this chasm as he chased Miantanamo, the chief of the Narragansett tribe. 100 years later, 1743, our tribe tried to sue for the right to have this land. About 8 years prior to that, a young man named Muhammad Leonamun sailed to England to join in a conversation with King George II of England. Remember, there was no United States yet at this time. To sue for the tribe to have the possession of this land. Now, think about that. This is 1735. He didn't go to Travelocity and catch the next ship out of New York City with a ticket that was on his phone. That should demonstrate for you the enormity of the importance of this land to our tribe. He got on a boat in 1735 and sailed to England to get it back. He died of smallpox before he ever even got to make that case. But it was taken to court and it was denied. 100 years later, he tried again. And that was in the midst of the development of everything you see here in these brick buildings and this preserved structure right over here. It was a time when the industrial age had taken hold here in Norwich. Corn, paper, nails, olives and maraschino cherries by the time the 20th century rolled around, all being made here with workers living in the workforce housing, some of which still stands today. A new era was ushered in, but our tribe didn't forget. About 2 weeks ago, a young man named Robert Rush, Norwich resident, Robert, I don't know if you're in the room, in the audience here today, slid this thing under my door, not even knowing. He had no idea we were doing this here today. He said, hey, I think I ought to have this piece of paper. So it's a photocopy of the Norwich Bulletin, January 5th, 1899. It says this, it says, Mohegan case. For some time, the descendants of the Mohegan tribe have laid claim to 16 acres of land along Sachem Street. 2 years ago, they brought the matter before the legislature, claiming ownership of the land on the south side of where we are, on the south side of Sachem Street, but the legislature denied them relief on the ground that it was a matter for the courts. So if you are a student of our federal recognition, you know that it took a very long time for that 1994 decision to recognize our tribe federally. Volumes and volumes and volumes of information. Inside of that federal recognition paperwork gives a little bit more to this story. And it says that this attempt by the Mohegan tribe to have the legislature grant the land back to the tribe was, quote, obnoxious special legislation for a particular case, as it discriminates invidiously, I don't know what that word means, but I'm going to read it to you, invidiously against the other citizens of the state, and that it would be invalid on constitutional grounds. So the article goes back to say that because it was not deemed an appropriate legislative matter, that the tribe would sue against the town of Norwich, and in particular, Miss Sarah Hubbard and the city of Norwich, so that he could gain title to the land as well as the highway called Sachem Street. That highway right up here called Sachem Street. I didn't even know who Sarah Hubbard was till I got here this morning, to be honest with you. Her family's name is all over that sign and every one of these buildings. It was the Hubbard family that created this industrial presence that's here in this community. That was back in 1899. Another half century later, John Hamilton once again took it to the courts, tried to get this land back, and again failed. Finally, in 1999, after we had been federally recognized and had the wherewithal to buy our land back, we were able to acquire the royal burial grounds up on the hill. It was the site of the Masonic Temple that had stood there since 1928. It was razed, and today the royal burial grounds are in a respectful condition on that hill. And when we stood here 15 months ago, we talked about the fact that this was the next step. We're creating this connection. If I can have a light moment in this very solemn day, we're getting our land back. Right? Now, the ancestors, they're not smiling down, they're nodding acknowledgement, because we're not really getting the land back. But we're being respected, remembered, and our plight is being understood and will be taught for years going forward. So the final step is in 2010 when Jason Vincent, who I alluded to earlier, started this 14-year process along with Bob Mills, Stephanie Fielding, and here just about everybody in this crowd, right? J.P. Marie, and I have a box. I have an archived box of all the folks who've been involved in this. And if I tried to read back to you all the names that have been involved, I would fail. So many people that have stayed the course and brought this to this day. Deb Hinchy, Emmett Riley. I mean, they're just too many to mention. But they dreamed it, and they worked hard to get it, and here we are today. And then thanks to 2023 American Rescue Plan Act allocation of $2.8 million, ladies and gentlemen, this place was built. It became a reality, and here we are. It links our past to the present and our future in a very beautiful and tangible way. I'm now honored to introduce a number of dignitaries who made this special occasion possible by their participation, support, or involvement. And first amongst those, since this is the first day of Native American Heritage Month, and in light of the fact that earlier this week, maybe last week, the President of our United States issued an official United States apology for the United States boarding school policy, an extension, reach, maybe not full reconciliation, but an acknowledgement and the extension of it. And so in that spirit, and perhaps in some ways a bit remarkable, we have with us the Deputy Director of the Eastern Regional Office of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Eric Wilcox is here in that official capacity, but ladies and gentlemen, it's worth noting that Eric Wilcox is a Narragansett tribal member. Eric?